Reverends, fathers, and dear compatriots, the task that is given to fulfill is very delicate and requires much tact. You will go certainly to evangelize, but your evangelization must inspire above all Belgian interests. Your principal objective in our mission in the Congo is never to teach the to know God. This they know already. They speak and submit to a Mungu, one Zambi, one Zakomba, and what else I don't know. They know that to kill, to sleep with someone else's wife, to lie, and to insult is bad. Have courage to admit it. You are not going to teach them what they already know. Your essential role is to facilitate the task of administrators and industrials, which means you will go to interpret the gospel in the way it will be best to protect your interests in that part of the world. For these things, you have to keep watch on disinteresting our savages from the richness that is plenty in their underground. To avoid that, they get interested in it and make you murderous competition one day and dream of overthrowing you. Your knowledge of the gospel will allow you to find texts ordering and encouraging your followers to love poverty. Like happier are the poor because they will inherit the heaven, and it's difficult for the rich to enter the kingdom of God. You have to detach from them and make them disrespect everything which gives courage to affront us. I make reference to their mystic system and their war fetish, warfare protection, which they pretend not to want to abandon. And you must do everything in your power to make it disappear. Your action will be directed essentially to the younger ones, for they won't revolt when the recommendation of the priest is contradictory to their parents' teachings. The children have to learn to obey what the missionary recommends, who is the father of their soul. You must singularly insist on their total submission and obedience. Avoid developing the spirit in the schools. Teach students to read and not to reason. There, dear patriots, are some of the principles that you must apply. You will find many other books, which will be given to you at the end of this conference. Evangelize the so that they stay forever in submission to the white colonialists, so they never revolt against the restraints they are undergoing. Recite every day, happy are those who are weeping because the kingdom of God is for them. Convert always the blacks by using the whip. Keep their women in 9 months of submission to work freely for us. Force them to pay you in signs of recognition, goats, chicken, or eggs every time you visit their villages, and make sure the never become rich. Sing every day that it's impossible for the rich to enter heaven. Make them pay tax each week at Sunday Mass. Use the money supposed for the poor to build flourishing business centers. Institute a confessional system which allows you to be good detectives, denouncing any black that has a different consciousness contrary to that of the decision maker. Teach the to forget their heroes and to adore only ours. Never present a chair to a black that comes to visit you. Don't give him more than one cigarette. Never invite him for dinner, even if he gives you a chicken every time you arrive at his house. King Leopold II of Belgium to his evangelical missionaries, 1883.
Greetings, everyone. I hope you're fine. I hope you are doing well. And I will appreciate if you can just smash that subscribe button, that like button, like never before. I just want to begin by saying this is the letter of King Leopold II of Belgium. In other words, King Leopold was a king in Belgium at the time. So he wrote this letter for the missionaries or to the missionaries in Africa at that time. Fathers, reverends, pastors, prophets, and all these other mafias. So he wrote this letter to them, the missionaries, those who are loved the most, because they are always calm. In other words, they are trained. In other words, they are like soldiers. They are trained to be calm in all circumstances. They always say, glory to God, glory be to Jesus. They are always calm. They call you mighty one. They call you the angel of God. They call you the child of God. But they have a purpose. So when you see people manipulating others, in the name of the church or in the name of God, you have to know that they adopted the entire lifestyle or that behavior, that attitude from King Leopold II and other missionaries who were under the leadership or the instructions of King Leopold II at that time. And this includes black pastors and prophets and like bishops and etc. When you see these prophets doing magic, when you see these prophets trying by all means to make sure that people are poor, promising them heaven and earth, but at the end of the day, people will always find themselves being poor, being drained. In other words, their money being taken away from them. You have to know that those pastors, prophets, they adopted that attitude, that lifestyle, and everything from King Leopold II and others who came before him. History is very important. This is what we need to understand. History is very important because every time we talk about history, it seems as if we are fighting. It seems as if maybe we are against certain people. Absolutely not. This is the history that you know. In other words, if you know where you come from, if you know your history, very well, there's a possibility or high possibility of making right decisions in your life. Why? Based on history. Because you don't want to keep on hurting yourself again and again. In other words, your intentions is to protect yourself. So in other words, if you want to protect yourself, you better know who you are. It doesn't mean it will give you the entire protection or full protection, but the most important thing is that it will give you a bit of understanding of where you are going and to help you as well to deal with your current situations or the things that you are currently dealing with. It's very important. So that is why history is so important. So this is just part one, because if we can go through the entire letter, it might take me maybe, for an example, 5 hours to 8 hours to go through the whole letter. So now we are going to do just part one. Reverends, fathers, and dear compatriots, the task that is given to fulfill is very delicate and requires much tact. You will go certainly to evangelize. But your evangelism or evangelization must inspire, above all, Belgium interest. In one of my previous videos, I spoke about European countries, to be exact, to be specific, that they've never had interest upon Africa or upon Africans. So we should not expect their solutions to work for us. In other words, their solutions will never work for us. This is based on history. This is a fact. It started long time ago. And again, here is another evidence. King Leopold II, who was the king of Belgium, he wrote this letter. He had authority to write this letter because he was a king. He was a king because they divided Africa like a cake. Everyone decided to say, I'll be in charge of East Africa. I'll be in charge of Central Africa. I'll be in charge. So King Leopold II was in charge of Central Africa. So to be exact, in Congo. This is where he was in charge. So he wrote this letter to the missionaries. In other words, these missionaries were sent to Africa not to spread the gospel, because every time we hear people talk about evangelism, to evangelize. We think about the spiritual growth. We think about spreading the gospel, about the Most High God. We think about all these other things. We think about spiritual empowerment. We think about fasting for 40 days. We think about love. We think about like brotherhood. We think about a lot of things every time we talk about evangelism, because it's exciting to talk about evangelism. But you have to understand, there's a different context here. There's a different context here. You have to bear in mind that I'm not talking about the ancient writings. I'm not talking about the ancient writings. I'm talking about these mafias who were sent to Africa using the ancient writings and manipulating the scriptures for what? For their own interest. So that is why here King Leopold said in his letter, but your evangelization must inspire above all Belgium interest. In other words, their interest. In other words, if someone comes in your life because they want to save themselves, then you got to be careful. You need to be very careful of that particular individual, because there are many people who will just come into your life. They'll want to form friendships with you because they want to save themselves. There are many people who want to come and associate with you, work for your business. In other words, to become close to you, but at the end of the day, they don't care about you. They only care about themselves. So this is similar to the system of King Leopold II. So they send all these people that people trust so much. That is why in churches you'll hear people referring to certain people as a father, spiritual father. In other words, that's a false doctrine to the core, because this is where it started. Because the aim, it was to manipulate people. That was the aim. The aim was all about manipulating people, manipulating the minds of people, programming people. So programming is different, because you have to understand that maybe during these times, probably there was no television, there was no radio, there was no all these other things at the time. So they had to use certain strategies to program people. When it seems as if they are no longer interested in the ancient writings, is because they are done with the ancient writings. They had to use these ancient writings a long time ago, because there was no TV, there was no radio, there was no social media, all these other things. So they had to use the ancient writings to manipulate people. The reason I'm not attacking the ancient writings, and I cannot attack the ancient writings, is because I have a different history about the ancient writings. But instead, they use the ancient writings to manipulate the society, to manipulate the Africans. So in other words, the ancient writings was a gateway, was the gateway to enter into Africa, so that they can take everything. Because whenever you read the ancient writings talks about love, talks about forgiving one another, talks about all these other things, like loving your neighbor as you love yourself. So all these words in the ancient writings were used as a vehicle to save themselves. To save themselves. So that is why these missionaries were working hand in hand with the colonizers, but they would act as if they were peaceful. Why? Because their mission was all about indoctrination. Because in order for you to be taught something, to be manipulated, in other words, they have to put you in a calm situation. You have to be calm. In other words, we should not be fighting, because if we fight, there's no way you can be manipulated. So in other words, we have to put you in a situation of calmness, so that we can educate you, so that we can do all these things. Why they use this strategy is because it was not easy to manipulate Africans at that time, because others were fighting, others were defending themselves. So that is why they had to use this strategy to say, you know what? Let's calm them down. Let's calm them down. So that is why they send the missionaries to say, you know what, missionaries, go there and speak peace and speak and speak love and speak like social cohesion and speak about all these other things, when in reality they were not even interested in those things, because in reality Africans should be the ones teaching the world about democracy, about social cohesion, about ubuntu, about love, brotherhood, and all these other things. So Africans should be teaching the whole world how is that peace and everything. But here is the thing: they use the ancient writing to say, you know what, in order for us to put our hands on gold, on platinum, on chrome, on all these minerals, this is what we need. Now we need these ancient writings. But we have to make sure that even these ancient writings, we only teach what we want them to know. We only give them the information that we want them to know. Why? Because we want to tame them. We don't want to use chains. We don't want to use all these things, but we want to use, yes, we can use chains. We can use all these other things, but we also need to use what we call the ancient writings. Then King Leopold II wrote this letter to the spiritual fathers, the ones you call spiritual fathers. These are mafias. Missionaries, these are mafias. Prophets, these are mafias. And he said, make sure when you evangelize, you have to be very strategic, because your evangelism should inspire Belgium's interest. This is King Leopold the second. So that is why I always say you cannot expect the solutions for Africa to come from other continents. There's no way. It's based on history. France was in Burkina Faso for many years. But look at the condition of Burkina Faso, the conditions of Niger, Mali, and other countries that were colonized by France. Look at their condition to today. In other words, they never had interest upon Africa. Look what is happening in Congo. Look at what is happening in Congo. Look at what is happening in Kenya. It's all about their interest. It's all about their interest. And look what is happening in South Africa. Every location there's a township that consists of four-room houses that consist of shacks, and then there's a town with bigger houses, big houses, big yards, and everything. Look at the infrastructure of your township. Look at the infrastructure in a suburb, the service delivery in a suburb and the service delivery in a township. It's not the same. What does this mean? What does this mean? It's all about their interest. This is according to history. These are facts. This is not about like trying to promote divisions and etc. We are not there. This is history. You should not interpret it differently. This is history, and this is a fact. King Leopold II is one of the most cruel people who have ever landed in Africa. King Leopold II is one of the stone-hearted people who have ever landed in Africa. He was like, teach them what we want. In other words, manipulate them. That is, program them. That is why I don't like all these programmings. That is why I don't like these programmings that you see, that you see them coming through television, social media, coming through movies, and all these other things. Because they are dangerous. They started long time ago. They used the ancient writings as a vehicle. What was the focus? The focus was their interest. Their interest. I'm not against a certain group of people. I'm not against a certain group of people at all. This is history that King Leopold II and many others, when they divided Africa, it was all about them. Even today, we can still see it's all about them. Others are going in other countries. They are like, now babies should have like a biometric what. It's all about them. They go to Senegal. They are like, now we have to do this GMO. It's all about them. In other words, they don't care. It's all about them. It's all about them. So if it was all about them from like 500 years ago, even during the times of King Leopold II, what has changed now? Absolutely nothing. If it's still about them, even in Ivory Coast, even in Senegal, even in Kenya, even in South Africa, then it means their solution will never work. In other words, the teachings of democracy, the teachings of all these things, the peace, love, is just a scam, because Africans should be the ones teaching that we need to love one another. Africans should be teaching others about love. And again, Africans should be teaching other Africans not to sell out, because we are where we are right now because of a lot of selling out. Selling out didn't start, like, for an example, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but selling out started long time ago. There was this thing called selling out. So this is the letter of King Leopold II. So in our next video, or one of our upcoming videos, we are going to do part 2. In part 2, this is where we will be breaking some of his words down to understand what was his mission and intentions. So the reason we need to break it down is because understanding is very important. Understanding is very important. You need to know your history. You need to know where you come from, so that whenever you associate with people, whenever you make decisions in life, at least you do so with understanding. You know very well what are you putting yourself into.